British Airways, the world's favourite airline.
From January, roast lamb will be coming down in price. And so will warm towels, sleepy dogs, piping hot showers, and cosy toes. Because next year, British Gas will be offering significantly lower prices to millions of homes. British Gas, the home of energy.
Here we are. Sun, sangria, and scenery. Saucy. And we got it for free.
Yes, thanks to our air miles from that west.
Gracias.
I missed the kids already.
Do leave off.
This is one of the most important monuments in Barcelona. It's so beautiful, like a beautiful woman. We can go inside. The Easter Nativity facade has a...
Gracias.
A very good choice, Susan.
You made it, Wally!
May as well have brought the kids.
Only NatWest credit cards earn you air miles both when you're at home and abroad.
Adios, amigo.
To apply, phone now on 0800 400 005, even if you're not a NatWest customer.
Capturing the very best moments of television. History brought to life with Clive James on TV, Thursdays at 8:30.
Good morning and welcome to the Sunday programme. On GMTV this morning, fighting over the family. Harriet Harman tells us why it's Labour who really care about lone parents. Neil Hamilton prepares for his last appeal to MPs. We'll be speaking to him live. And a fresh start or a false dawn? We assess William Hague's first conference as leader with two of the Tory new boys. But first, the main news this morning, and here's Kate Galloway. Kate.
Thanks very much, Alastair. Good morning. And good morning to you. The England team has returned home to a hero's welcome after drawing 0-0 with Italy to win a place in the World Cup finals. The celebrations were marred by violence in the Rome Stadium during the match when riot police clashed with English supporters. As an inquiry was launched into the trouble, the Football Association criticised the treatment of English fans and Italian management of ticket sales. Meanwhile, an England supporter has been seriously injured in a knife attack in Rome. We have two reports, the first from Tom Skippings.
Tired, triumphant and £250,000 a man better off. That's what World Cup qualification will bring in bonuses to the England players. But the real prize comes next summer in France.
We were the better team, we had the better chances, and we thoroughly deserved to get through to the World Cup in '98.
The players returned to Luton Airport in the early hours, covered in glory. The party had begun in Trafalgar Square as soon as England had secured the point they needed to clinch a place in the finals.
It gives us all a lift and we should be feeling very proud. 8 years is far too long for our nation not to have qualified for a World Cup, so you know, it's a wonderful moment tonight.
After an anxious opening spell, Glenn Hoddle's side never looked in trouble. Captain Ince went close to giving them a deserved victory. A red card for Angelo Di Livio eased the pressure before Ian Wright almost produced the perfect finish. Still time for one major scare, Christian Vieri's header just wide. But England were not to be denied. Phase 1 of Glenn Hoddle's mission is complete. He's taken England to the World Cup finals and put together a side capable of matching the world's best. Stage 2 begins in 8 months' time, and for England's players and their supporters, it can't come a day too soon. Tom Skippings, GMTV Sport, Luton Airport.
These are the television pictures beamed around the world last night. What they do not show is who started it. Italian fans ripped up seats, using them as missiles. Italian police drew batons as the English remonstrated. During the day near the famous Spanish Steps, I witnessed successive use of police batons. These missiles are being thrown by Italian youths. The target, their own police force. There was no English involvement here. After the game, the FA officially complained about Italian police handling of the crowd, over-the-top policing. Those were the thoughts of an English fan, and he should know he's an officer from back home.
I think it was disgraceful. First of all, there were more people in there than there were tickets. We didn't have our tickets looked at all.
And he said they were all too ready to draw their batons. David Mellor, head of the government's football task force, plans to take it further.
There was obviously trouble in a section of the ground where it appears that tickets have been bought on the black market. I think there were some very disturbing television scenes, not least showing excessive use of batons by the Italian police.
Considering there was only one official arrest inside the ground during the game, the policing would seem to be heavy-handed. Many fans have been forced to walk back from the stadium, and when they do get here, this is the greeting they get. They're forced to run the gauntlet of Italian police with pistols and rifles. And irrespective of who's to blame, the FA believes last night will have no bearing on their bid to host the World Cup in the year 2006. Martin Frizzell, GMTV News in Rome.
Well, World Cup celebrations have started in earnest north of the border after Scotland clinched their place in the finals. Craig Brown's team beat Latvia 2-0 at Celtic Park, paving the way for a trip to France for next year's tournament. Lawrence Archer reports.
Scottish celebrations went on into the morning, the Tartan Army toasting their 7th World Cup appearance in the last 8 tournaments.
Excellent, what a day. We're going to France, we're going to France.
Scotland had made an edgy start, but Blackburn's Kevin Gallagher settled nerves shortly before the break with his 6th international goal in the last 5 games. Latvia never really threatened, and Gordon Jury headed home a second 10 minutes from time to start the celebrations. The Republic of Ireland cemented their place in the playoffs with a 1-1 draw against Romania, Tony Cascarino with their late equaliser. Ryan Giggs almost inspired Wales to a famous comeback against Belgium, earning a penalty and scoring another in their 3-2 defeat in Brussels. Defeat also for Northern Ireland, who went down 1-0 in Portugal. Lawrence Archer, GMTV Sport.
The government is reportedly ready to inject up to £250 million into the health service to head off a winter beds crisis. The new money will be found from savings in other government departments, including the Ministry of Defence. The prospect of growing waiting lists has seen the Labour come under increasing pressure to act. A national shortage of blood is putting operations at risk. The Department of Health is making an urgent appeal for donors with an advertising campaign to be launched tomorrow. No surgery has yet been cancelled, but officials say supplies are needed to prevent the cancellation of non-urgent operations. The shortage is due to people failing to turn up for appointments because of seasonal illnesses. Tony Blair is expected to attend multi-party talks on the future of Northern Ireland tomorrow. The visit to Belfast could see the Prime Minister having a possible first meeting with Sinn Féin leaders, including Gerry Adams. Downing Street could not confirm the trip, which has been expected by politicians for several weeks. The Tories have expressed serious reservations about the cost of the Greenwich Dome project. Conservative Central Office dismissed a report suggesting William Hague was preparing a campaign of all-out opposition to the scheme, which the government intends to be the centrepiece of Britain's Millennium celebrations. But a spokesperson conceded there were concerns about the price of the dome, which was launched by the Tory government. The rest of this morning's sports news now, and the Japanese Grand Prix has just finished with Germany's Michael Schumacher first across the finishing line in his Ferrari. His compatriot Heinz-Harald Frentzen is a Williams car, finished second. Britain's Eddie Irvine was third in the second Ferrari. Prince Nassim Hamed has defended his WBO featherweight title for the 8th time. Hamed stopped Puerto Rico's Jose Badillo in the 7th round in Sheffield. Chris Eubank's comeback ended in defeat, Wales' Joe Casago winning on points to claim the WBO super middleweight title. Greg Rosetsky has a chance to clinch his 2nd title in a week today after winning through to the final of the CA Trophy in Vienna. World number 4 beat fellow Brit Tim Henman in straight sets yesterday to set up a clash against Goran Ivanisevic. Golf now, and defending champion Ernie Els will meet Vijay Singh in the final of the World Match Play Golf Championship at Wentworth later today. Els overcame Nick Price at the first extra hole yesterday. Singh booked his place in the final with a 4-3 win over Brad Faxon. And that's all the news for the moment. Now it's back to Alastair.
Thanks, Kate. Look at the morning newspapers, and a lot of them chopped and changed, with the football finishing rather late last night, so there are more than there might normally be. Let's start with the Observer, whose lead political story is, as you heard in the news there, NHS to get an extra £250 million courtesy of the defence budget. But there are the Scots doing well against Latvia, and in the second edition there are the English people led by Glenn Hoddle doing well. The Sunday Times leads on Supergrass exposes yard corruption. Here are our brave lads, as they say, before the event, and our slightly less than brave lads after the event in a different photograph in the Sunday Times. Sunday Telegraph, we got it wrong on blacks, the army chief admits there. Tories set to drop support from the Dome. You heard that in Kate's news, and again in the second edition. Similar picture to the one you just saw a moment ago, but England's draw is passport to World Cup finals, as indeed are the Scots, I'd just like to point out. The Independent on Sunday, week 3 of the legalised cannabis campaign, but now claiming 80% back that campaign. And another story here, will Tony Blair shake hands with Gerry Adams? Briefly, the tabloid newspapers. Sunday Mirror, Piers Merchant strongly denies this story here, that he's been caught having an affair or seeing a former girlfriend before. He denies that absolutely. The Express on Sunday, what Maggie really thinks about the new Tories, but here is the result of the football. Mail on Sunday, blood crisis at hospitals, English fans clash, triumph in Rome, a happy face there, and another story concerning another MP, but this time from the Labour Party. My arm is tired, but I hope you are now fully briefed. Those are the front pages, hundreds of them. But joining me now with their views on the stories of the day, a familiar face from her BBC days, and actually with me before that on Channel 4 News, but now with The Guardian political correspondent Anne Perkins, and with her the Daily Telegraph's font of wisdom and advisor on things spiritual, Anne Atkins. Good morning, and welcome to both of you. Anne Perkins, let us start with you and a political story. The Sunday Times, page 2. Hague faces resignations over Europe. It was all supposed to be put away and settled, and it isn't.
They can't stop talking about it, can they? It's like returning to the old wound. And the truth is that the shadow cabinet is absolutely hopelessly divided on it, as the Conservative Party was in government. And someone is going to have to go unless they do stop talking about it, which is their only appeal. And the papers are absolutely certain that it ought to be David Curry, who's considered to be the most Europhile of those in the shadow cabinet, and has also got a terrible absentee record in shadow cabinet. He apparently spent his summer in Provence studying French agriculture rather than England looking at English agriculture. And
could have been worse. It could have been Tuscany. You'd have bumped into every other member of the Labour Party there.
That would have probably sealed his fate, as you say, yes.
Anne Atkins, the intriguing thing about the Conservative Party conference last week was that, in a sense, they were trying to get away from the European stuff and the political stuff that Anne Perkins was talking about by raising the moral agenda. How many points did they score on that effort?
I thought they scored nil, actually, but that was simply my impression, was that they were scrabbling around trying to pick up the pieces that have fallen from Labour's table instead of being who they are. But I don't know. I mean, I was amazed to find in the papers this morning that the Sunday Telegraph the editorial is backing William Hague, which just hit me in the face like a sort of wet fish, because I hadn't realised anybody was.
But was it because they didn't have much to say on the moral agenda, or because you just didn't believe what you heard?
I didn't believe what I heard, and it seemed to me that it was the worst kind of vote scrabbling without any moral courage. And I have to say, I find it quite chilling, this assumption that compassion and moral laxity are the same thing, because in fact they're the opposite from one another. I mean, of course we have to be welcoming and caring and compassionate towards those with alternative lifestyles. I mean, I hope that doesn't need saying. But when you say it in such a way that you undermine the traditional family, it's the opposite of compassionate, because what happens in the end is that you weaken the moral fibre, and the people who always suffer are the children. And when you look at the statistics of how children do suffer in a society which is breaking up morally, it's terrifying.
Anne Perkins, did you find it credible on the moral agenda?
I think everyone was a little startled at Mr. Portillo's sudden rediscovery of what I think is...
Damascus is a word that features a lot in the papers this morning.
Damascus is, and that really sort of, you know, perhaps isn't sort of strong enough. I'm also struck by the way that the Conservatives would say of themselves, we seemed to be lacking in compassion, we seemed to be hard, Well, I think many people would say they were lacking in compassion, and they were very tough, although that didn't stop, as we all know, social sector spending soaring.
All right.
But I mean, I think it's an interesting point on the moral front, the impossibility, you would argue, of combining both. I'd say two things. One, the Tories are rediscovering what has actually always been a dominant strand in their past, a sense of inclusivity, the one nation approach. And secondly, I mean, they have got a real problem over whether or not it is possible for the state to do something for the family, as you would apparently believe it is.
Sure. Let me butt in there, because we'll be talking to Damien Green and John Bercow, two young Tory MPs, in a moment about exactly that. But let's move it on to another thing, which may actually turn out to be an interesting yardstick for both of the parties and how they relate to the modern world, and that's week 3 of the Independence campaign on legalising cannabis. They now say 80% of people are in favour of it, Anne.
Yeah, it's a very oddly written up survey, though, isn't it? Because they go from, they say 1 in 6 think this, and an astonishing under 45-year-old 45% think that. And, you know, they're not, it's not a very clearly or